Hello and welcome. My name is Doug Davidoff. I'm the founder and CEO at Imagine Business Development. I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of their day, whether you're listening to this webinar live or on its recording. I want you to know that we do appreciate the scarce resource of time and attention today. And it is certainly our objective over the next 45, 50 minutes to make sure that this is time and attention well spent. If you bring a group of growth-oriented sales, marketing, business executives, venture companies, analysts, researchers, whoever is obsessed by business growth, and you say, open forum, let's talk about the key issues. What are the key issues? Typically, one of the first three things you'll hear, certainly one of the first five, is you'll hear something about the sales cycle, and specifically about cutting the sales cycle. Now, what's interesting to me and I hate to admit this, a little bit of a veteran of the sales wars, if you will, or the sales experiences, are when I came into the business 30 years ago, when I started selling professionally 30 years ago, reducing sales cycle time was a top issue. And today, reducing sales cycle time is still a top issue. And it's not a top issue because we've had such great success and we want to continue to do that. It's a big issue because despite all of the time, energy, and attention and obsession with shortening the sales cycle, the reality is it's getting longer. The reality is that all the things that we're doing, we're still seeing sales cycle times take longer. We're seeing the percentage of sales processes that end in no decision staying the same or increasing. We're seeing sales costs increase. So clearly there's something wrong with how we've done things, or else this problem would be solved in some fashion. And so what I want to do today is really get in deep around the issues that are causing sales cycle times to languish. Share with you why it's a problem, and then provide a framework for how to solve that problem. Now, certainly in a 50-minute webinar, we're not going to be able to provide the hymns and verses and chapters, if you will, to that total solution. So again, the goal here is to give you that framework so that you can take a look at what you're doing, take a look at how you're doing things, and be sure to apply the right steps, the right strategies, the right tactics, and at least be able to take good steps towards looking at your approach, figuring out what might need to change, and beginning to make those adjustments. Now, at the core of the problem, and if any of you have talked to me before, you've probably heard me talk about this in the last couple of months because this has become a pretty big issue, is something that we discovered. There's an obsession with speed today, fast growth. And my brother's an engineer, so he reminds me from time to time that there's the sales and marketing way to look at things, and there's the engineering way to look at things. And while we often conflate the term speed with the term velocity, they actually mean very different things. And so I want to preface today's conversation with a key concept, and that is you've got to decide what your focus is going to be. Are you aiming for speed? Or are you aiming to maximize velocity, to enhance velocity? They're different. Speed is a measurement of how fast you're going. Velocity is a measurement of how long it takes to get to a point in time, to get to a destination. Part of the problem with companies today is we are working so fast and we have prioritized speed to such a level that we're losing velocity. We're working harder, we're working faster, and it's taking longer. Or we just have to work at such an exponential rate of speed to be able to enhance velocity that it's just killing our organizations from a cost standpoint, from a time and capacity standpoint, from a burnout standpoint, and so on. So the goal today is to really get into this idea about how do we increase velocity. And so when I think about the sales cycle, I don't think of it so much as sales cycle time or sales cycle speed. I think of it as sales cycle velocity. So let's talk about why sales cycles are getting longer, why velocities are shortening. Well, the first reason is we are obsessed with the sales cycle. We spend more time than I could quantify as sales and marketing executives, educators, learners, etc. We are obsessed about the sales cycle. We do all kinds of things to optimize the funnel, optimize channels, that what we forget is the real driver is about the buying cycle. And so when we talk about the sales cycle, we have to remember that the sales cycle is actually the buying cycle. And the buying cycle begins long before we have the first inkling of opportunity to engage with our prospects, our leads, our targeted accounts, and so forth. And the more that we can understand the buying cycle, and the more that we align to the buying cycle, the greater the velocity we're going to be able to pick up. So yes, those things that we do with our leads, prospects, and customers are absolutely important. But when you want to identify the real causes of delays, the real causes of lack of predictability, it's understanding what got us there in the first place. Here's the second problem. Legacy selling, whatever you call it, if you're selling fundamentally in the same basic way that we sold 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it just ain't enough. You got three key problems with legacy selling. The first thing is it's relationship based. It's like me, like me, like me. It's part of the reason why we don't believe salespeople. You know, it's interesting because the trust that people have in salespeople is depressingly low. Yet I work with salespeople all the time, and I find that very few of them truly lie. The difficulty is that we've been trained to tell people what they want to hear. We've been trained to focus on relationship and likability so much that it's like when we go to the store and we try on a shirt or a dress or something like that, and the salesperson goes, "Oh, you look great in that." And of course, we immediately go to, "Wait, are you saying that because I look great in that, or are you saying that because you want me to buy it?" Right? And so that relationship basis, is as well-intentioned as it is, actually contributes to a lot of the lost trust that exists between seller and buyer. The second problem is, and by the way, this is one of the causes for what gets all the attention about the biggest change in how buyers behave today, is that traditional selling, legacy selling, doesn't focus on the problem. It doesn't define the problem. We're solutions focused. Think about it. Solutions selling, consultative selling, feature benefit selling, whatever you call it, it's solutions focused. Well, the solution doesn't matter until I've got a defined problem. And because we're so focused on the solution, which is at the end, we've actually forced our prospects, we've forced our markets to go out on their own and to become self-reliant in defining the problem. It's not that they don't want you to be involved. It's that we haven't demonstrated the ability, the worthiness, and we haven't earned the right to be involved in the earlier stages of the conversation. And this all kind of adds up to the idea that legacy selling is very downstream focused. It's all about the end step. What I talked about with the sales cycle is a great example of that. And this approach costs millions of dollars. If you really look at the formula of legacy selling, I refer to it as pace times yield times value times repeat. That equals profit. Pace is the number of opportunities you generate. Yield is the conversion rate. Value is the margin dollars. And repeat is the loyalty and frequency that people buy at. And what's happening is we're seeing number of opportunities per head, per sales rep decrease, which, by the way, is confounding to me. I'm seeing, on average, salespeople, by and large, handling fewer and fewer opportunities, yet we have all this technology. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to handle more opportunities. We're seeing conversion rates go down. There's such a focus on volume and mass and fast and speed that, you know, for a little while we hit this place where what we lost in yield we could make up in volume, but now we're making that a rule. As a result of that, we're getting commoditized, which is compressing margin dollars, plus our costs are going up, and switching costs are extraordinarily easy. So the legacy sales approach just isn't designed for how the world works today and contributes to this problem of longer sales cycle times and slower velocity. There's a chasm that exists between marketing and sales. For all of the lip service and conversation around aligning sales and marketing, we regularly forget that there is a chasm between the awareness and lead being created and the readiness for sales. And far too often, the way we respond to it is to try to force people through that chasm or over that chasm. And what's really happening is we're just kind of throwing more and more leads down to the bottom of whatever that chasm is, representing lost opportunities, burning our addressable market, and so forth. We've created, and if you were on our webinar last month, by the way, I should mention that our webinar last month on doubling your pipeline is a great complement to this program. We talked last month about the idea of what I call bulging funnels. The top of our funnel is getting stuffed. We're backed up and we're not activating our leads. We're so focused on lead generation, sell, that yeah, we've increased our funnel. We've built tops of funnels, but we are just clogged up, backed up, and stuck. This is causing costs to go up because now it's expected. We've been blogging. We have to keep blogging. We create content. We have to continue to create content. Oh, wait, let's add chat. Let's add video. Let's add this. And we're doing more and more just to maintain that relevance, but we still haven't figured out how to activate that raw material in a predictable, higher yield way. And this is causing velocities to go down and sales cycle times to increase. And there is an old phrase that says, what gets measured gets done. And I learned at a really early age that if what gets measured gets done, then you better be really careful about what you measure. And we've gotten so focused on optimizing activities that we measure the wrong things. By the way, manufacturing learned about this decades ago. Manufacturing used to do what the go-to-market process today, what the dominant go-to-market process today does. Manufacturing used to optimize, see costs go up, see throughput go down, see old inventory increase that gets slower or heavier and less profitable, right? One of the things that they realized was they were measuring the wrong things. We measure the wrong things. We measure things like clicks and response rates. We're not solving for clicks or response rates. We shouldn't be solving for meetings set, meetings held. We look at sales cycle time as a chronological issue, not a velocity issue, not a capacity issue. And we look at things like closing rates through prisms that drive us to the wrong end conclusion. We're not measuring throughput. We're not measuring velocity. We're not built for those things. And as a result, even in the lip service of aligning with the customer and becoming customer-centric, we're actually building our sales and marketing processes and our demand generation processes to conflict with how buyers behave. That creates friction. In our effort to eliminate friction, we're creating more and more hidden friction that is causing sales cycle times to increase, causing velocities to decrease. Those are the 5 fundamental reasons, the 5 issues that we have to address if we're going to solve this funnel. We've got to align the sales and buying cycle, move away from legacy selling, bridge the chasm, activate to unclog our funnels, and measure the right things. Put simply, and by the way, if you can only stay for a portion of this webinar, this next part is the portion to stick with. Put simply, we have to align with today's buyers. And don't get me wrong, you can ignore the next couple of points that I make here. And if you throw more money at the problem and you increase your hustle, and you increase your speed and you increase the risk that you're taking, you'll be able to fool yourself that you're making progress. But if you don't accept these principles that I'm about to share with you, then all you're doing is working on the edges. You're not solving the core issue that is causing business growth engines to get weaker. Even as we're seeing growth, by the way, even though we're seeing companies that are growing, we're in an extraordinarily hot economy. And it's fascinating to me because we might not see an economy quite like this for some time. And think about how hard it is. Think about how we talk about how hard it is. I want everyone to just pause for a moment and realize that 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to say, do you remember the good old days? These are the good old days of tomorrow. And think about it. If it's not easy now, how much harder is it going to be when these are the good old days? So to make it easier, to move towards effortless, we have to align with our buyers today. We have to understand and accept some key principles. I had someone point out to me, actually, we don't have to accept these. We do have to understand them because not understanding these principles would be the equivalent of not understanding gravity. Right? Buyers buy on their time and their terms, not ours. Good salespeople and marketers, well, we can influence that, but we can't change it. Right? Our job is to align with the customer so that when the timing is right, we're there and we're favored. I like to say Goldilocks had sales figured out. Not too early, not too late. Let's get there just right. People don't want to be sold to, but they do want to eliminate their problems and capture their opportunities. And they'll follow their perceived path of least resistance to do so. The sellers, seller, marketer, growth executive, whatever you call yourself, the sellers that align with these facts will win sales faster and gain an unfair competitive advantage. But understand what this means. It means a fundamental shift in how we do what we do. Right? Let's take a look at the pantheon of sales and marketing today and how it, for lack of a better word, goes to market. I need to credit Marty Neumeier for the graphics that I'm about to share. He created them. I'm pretty sure they were in his book, Brand Gap. If you haven't read Marty's stuff, I highly, highly encourage you to do it. Fascinating reading, easy reading, and tremendously insightful. All right, let's look at marketing and sales. Marketing is akin to telling the world, I'm a great lover. Selling is reaching out to people so that you can tell them that I'm a good lover. PR is hiring a third party to go out and tell the world, trust me, he's a good lover. Advertising is, hey, if we repeat it often enough, people will believe it. And graphic design says, let's make it an icon. Let's make it an image. Right? But here's the thing. This doesn't work anymore. If you want to think about what it means to align with your buyer, if you want to think about what it means to have a strong brand, if you want to think about what it means to be able to truly increase your sales cycle velocity, shorten sales cycle times, this is what it has to look like. Your customer has to come to you and share, I understand you're a great lover. You see, the sales cycle begins long before the first conversation. The sales cycle begins long before there's a product, a service, or a solution on the table to talk about. How you're seen and understood when there's nothing to buy, when there's no action to take, is going to have the biggest impact on your sales cycle velocity and your sales cycle time. By the time it enters an active buying cycle, you're limited on what you're going to be able to do. Your opportunity to change the game is to be there before it matters. So remember, the sales cycle begins long before the first conversation. Artie, let's talk about how to cut your sales cycle. Wait, hold on a second. I do not want to talk about how to cut your sales cycle time. I know That was the name of the webinar. But you know what? As I was building out the deck, as I was working on it, I realized if I talked about how to cut the sales cycle time, I would be doing you a disservice. So I am taking executive privilege here, and I'm changing the topic of the webinar today. Let's talk about how to gain 25 to 50% velocity in your sales cycle. Because what you're going to find is sales cycle time is actually not your limiting factor. It's sales cycle velocity. Before I get into the framework, let me share first and foremost the most valuable thought I can share today. And this is kind of the whole idea of speed versus velocity boiled down to one sentiment. The key to shortening the sales cycle, the key to increasing sales velocity is to slow down the process. You speed it up, if you will, by slowing it down. And what that means is you increase the velocity by slowing it down, doing it right. You'll get there faster. Now, I want you to think for a moment, and I want you to ask yourself, what is the number one restraining barrier you have to growing your business, to growing your sales? And if you're thinking it's money or capital, that's probably not your number one restraining factor. It's a contributor to it, but it's not the number one restraining factor. There's money out there if you want it badly enough. The restraining factor is time. And so if you are going to increase your sales cycle velocity, you have to be obsessed with the utilization of your time. Now, that's not time in a chronology standpoint. That's time in a time used standpoint, right? Every second I use to do one thing is a second that I can't do something else. And the restraining factor of time and the opportunity of cost of time is the key barrier for growth companies today. And so if you want to increase your sales cycle velocity, you need to become a really, really good, a world-class Texas Hold'em poker player. You need to be great at poker. Now, here's the thing that is the difference. This is the measurable difference between great poker players, the ones who consistently win and make a living off of poker, versus those who show up and enable others to make a living off of poker. Because, by the way, if you're a good poker player, you're not going to make any money except at your $2 ante tables in your neighborhood. You are going to feed the great poker players, and you're going to enable them to make their living. So what's the difference? Here is the number one measurable difference between great poker players and good poker players. Great poker players fold far, far more frequently than good poker players. You want to increase your sales cycle velocity? Fold more frequently. You see, if you're playing Texas Hold'em, and you're not in a situation where you have to make the bet because that's where the ante is, you're basically only going to play a hand in 4 situations. If you have a pair, if you have an ace plus combination, if you got 2 cards of the same suit, or 2 cards that are adjacent. Those are basically, and there's some variation depending upon who you follow, but any research on top quality poker will see a extraordinarily finite number of combinations that lead to a player playing the hand. And if they don't have this in their hand, they fold it. They do not play. For them, it's money. For them, they put chips on the table. They're going to run out of chips. That's the equivalent of our time, right? When we're not folding, we're putting our chips on the table and more chips and more chips and more chips. And I am telling you, it is far, far, far better to fold early than to fold or get beat late. So number one, be really clear. What is the right situation? What are the right gates? When do you move forward? When do you not move forward? There's an old adage in negotiation that the person who is most willing to walk away from the table without a deal is the one who wins the negotiation. And too often on the sales side, we are the least willing to leave the table. And that's why the buyer wins. And we lose in cost, in time, in unpredictability. Fold frequently. Be clear. What are the hands that you're willing to play? There is a tremendous amount of conversation around this whole idea of everything related to customer acquisition, customer success. And we have gotten obsessed, for good reason. We have gotten obsessed by the disciplines of what's involved in generating customers at higher velocities. But the problem is that we have begun to look at these as individual disciplines. These are becoming silos if they haven't already become silos. And we keep solving for, optimizing for this box alone. That does not lead to greater velocity. It leads to speed, right? We're optimizing. But it's not generating the end result. Do not solve for the function, solve for the whole. We are building a manufacturing process. We're solving for throughput, revenue, lifetime value per X. That's what we're solving for. And that means sometimes we need to be sub-optimized in one area so that we can be fully optimized overall. When you fully optimize each individual function, you'll actually create conflict. You'll cause costs to go up and throughput to go down. Further, understand that this acquisition process fits in an overall ecosystem that has to be aligned. If you're not solving for the whole, then you're going to build fractures into your process, which are going to lead to misalignments, and they're going to be small misalignments. So they're not going to be easily seen, but they're going to lead to the need to go faster and faster to keep up. Call that the treadmill of business growth, right? We run faster every year just to get what we got last year. Now we got to run a little bit faster to get a little bit more. That's what's going to happen every day when we're not solving for the platform, when we're not solving for the ecosystem. View your customer acquisition process as a platform and optimize for the whole. Now, you'll recall I talked earlier about one of the problems with legacy selling being that we're super solutions focused. You want to increase your sales cycle velocity? Sell the problem first. Understand that when someone makes a buying decision, there's really three sales being made. The first sale is that there's a problem, that the status quo is no longer viable. There are three decisions that are made there. Number one, there's a problem. Number two, this is the problem. Like, what is the problem? Not just there is a problem, but what's the problem? And number three, the status quo is not viable. Too often, sales organizations leave it to the buyer alone to figure this out. And we never go through the process to even make sure that we're both clear on understanding or deciding what the problem is. This is the number one reason for decision reluctance. This is the number one reason that decisions end in no decision. It's not that you didn't BANT qualify them. It's not that you didn't implement a good, strong closing sequence. It's not that you didn't ask the right number of questions. It's not that you didn't spin them. It's that the customer, the prospect, never actually defined what is the problem and what's the consequence of the problem. Right? That's the context that's missing in sales cycle after sales cycle after sales cycle that kills velocity, lengthens time, crushes predictability. Sell the problem first. Be clear on what's the problem. Then that moves to sale two. What's the best solution? If this is the problem, how do I solve it? What are we willing to do to solve it? That leads to sale three. Why are we the best solution? We've got hundreds of thousands, millions of salespeople running around. Sale three salespeople, I call them, right? We're the best. We're the best. Here's why you should hire us. Buy from me. Buy from me. Hi, everybody. I'm a solution looking for a problem. Right? And we've never actually stopped and slowed down and said, okay, what is the problem? Why does it matter? What's the best way to solve it? Okay, now let me share with you how we can help you. And I don't care if you're involved in enterprise sales, highly complex sales cycles that take 2 to 3 years. You're selling a SaaS product that has a sales cycle of 30 days, or your entire sale occurs without two humans talking to each other. You're still going through these same processes, right? For me to buy from you, especially if I haven't bought from you in the past, I need to decide there's a problem with how I've been doing things. I need to change. That my current situation isn't solved, isn't viable. I need to figure out what's the state that I want, and then I decide who I want to buy it from. And because we are so sale 3 oriented, we've created this problem that we speak about so much. Buyers are 2/3 of the way through the journey before they're willing to talk to a salesperson. Yeah, that's true, actually, for the most part. I'm not saying it's impossible to get in there, but it's hard, and it's getting harder. And there's more and more stuff coming. You think the technology on the marketing and sales side is powerful? You should see the technology on the buy side that's helping them stay away from marketers and salespeople. Right? Here's the thing that we're finding interesting. If you're like the 5 to 10% way or earlier, it's actually pretty easy to get conversation going if you're oriented to the right places. And by conversation, I mean engagement. It could be physical conversation or not, but actual engagement. And when they're ready to actually take action, it's possible to get in there. It's getting harder and harder to get in there in the middle. Now, by the way, when they get to the middle, they're less and less open to influence. So we hit a point of diminishing returns for all of our sales resources that are happening. This is what the zero moment of truth is all about. But the difficulty with this illustration of the zero moment of truth is it indicates that the zero moment of truth ends at the first moment of truth, that interaction with seller and buyer. And that was probably true for a short period of time, but today it's not. Today, the zero moment of truth carries all the way through, right? The zero moment of truth never ends. Buyers are always conducting their own parallel journey. We need to be positioned to win in Zmont. And that doesn't mean just winning before they talk to us. That's what lead generation is about. That's why inbound marketing is big. That's why marketing has changed what they're doing. We have to win the zero moment of truth while they're talking to us, while we're trying to get the conversation going. We have to continue to create real value in that zero moment of truth, or we lose the opportunity to grow. We lose relevance. We become commoditized. We lose out to other issues. Right. This is what building lift is all about. Right. If you've heard me talk about this before, growing a business is about taking advantage of physics and the principle of lift. Is the velocity of our activity and our engagement above the wing greater than the velocity below the wing? If it's greater, we're going to create a lift effect. If it's not, we're going to lose. To take it out of theory and to apply it to a business setting, the question you got to ask yourself is, where does buying intent occur? At what point in the journey does a buyer go, you know what, we got to seriously look at doing something here? That's the equivalent of the wing. And the difficulty is we put all of our resources, not all, but a vast majority of our resources for the vast majority of companies are all geared for post-buying intent, which puts us in a hugely competitive situation, but also creates the vacuum on the downward thrust, making it harder and harder for us to get that velocity to be able to grow, to get that velocity to sustain growth rates. Right? If you look at it from a funnel perspective, buying intent occurs typically around 2/3 of the way through the middle of the funnel, which, and I encourage you to watch the webinar from last month on doubling your pipeline, addresses this place that's just missing in the vast majority of our sales and marketing organizations, is we've never really built a strong middle of the funnel, right? And so we're generating traffic, we're generating larger databases, but it's not translating because we're not leading to that point of buying intent. We need to understand where it occurs, and we need to align with it, and we need to build our website behind it, right? And we need to think about our entire strategy, it's less and less funnel management, and it's more and more intent management. How do we take somebody from low intent and lead them down the path to high intent so that we're there as the intent increases? That's the key to generating greater demand at lower costs. It's about aligning our funnels together. It's about the sales side funnel matching the buy side funnel, right? We generate a lead and we want to go straight to sales opportunity, and we skip engagement and curiosity and investigation, right? If you want to increase your velocity, you got to activate your leads, implement lead activation plays. A lead activation play is a low risk on the part of the buyer, the prospect, low effort on the part of the prospect, low pressure for the prospect, and high impact, right? What are you doing that's low risk, low effort, low pressure, that has high impact, that is customer focused and teaches your prospect the problem so that they can understand the problem? Because, by the way, that's where intent comes from. Intent comes from the decision that the status quo is not viable. And by the way, problem could be bad problem, trouble, good problem, opportunity. Right? But what are we doing to activate those leads so that they increase engagement, so that we're there and influencing that point of intent? Here are some examples of some lead activation plays. We do things like demand generation website report cards. We assess somebody's website. They don't even know we're doing it, and we just send them the report. We do SEO audits. We have any number of assessments and appraisals. Drift and HubSpot have two great SaaS offers here. HubSpot, grade your website. It's extraordinarily easy, and you learn something and you begin thinking. Drift has started a how fast are you responding to leads, and they'll actually test you and give you a report. Activate your leads. Stop focusing on the sale so fast. Focus on lead activation first. When we've got engagement, and by the way, engagement is the battleground of value for the next decade. The companies that win over the next decade are going to be focused on engagement above everything else, because if you get engagement with the right types of people, sales will take care of themselves. Which brings us to our next key point. If you take a look at the people that you sell to, the companies that you sell to, and the people involved in a decision, you're going to find that you could break those people up basically into two groups. There's the people who can, that's your authority, and there's the people who care. That's the people who actually live with the problem or use whatever it is that you do. The trouble is there's actually very little overlap, and in businesses today, that overlap is getting less and less between the people who can and the people who care, right? So the people who care, they have the problem, the direct problem that your product or service typically addresses. But the people who care can't write checks, can't cause change to happen, don't even think about change. The people who can don't have the problem that typically your product or service addresses. They have, and stay with me for a moment, they have the problem that is created because the problem that your product or service addresses is there. It's connected, but it's different. And we've got to learn how to craft our message and craft our engagement and craft our conversation and manage our sales process to be relevant to both parties. That needs to be your sales focal point. Too often we're positioned to one or the other. We need to be positioned to one and the other. That's the key to increasing sales cycle velocity. I've always been a fan of Four Seasons philosophy, where they say, automate the predictable so you can humanize the unpredictable. And if you are not full scale at the front of the automation process, good luck. Some research that I'm still analyzing that came out recently from the Aberdeen Group highlighted one of the key causes of slower sales cycles. And one of the things that they identified is the number of manual processes that exist. Now, the solution is not just automate it, because to give you a scientific description, automation is a bitch. Right? So it's not just automate it. Automation takes a lot of planning, thought, strategy, and structure, but you absolutely have to automate the management of your systems, or you will not be able to manage the non-value creative parts of customer acquisition effectively enough to generate velocity. You'll have to work faster and faster. You will get faster. You'll be running like you've never run before. You'll be the Flash Gordon of your industry, but you'll get nowhere. Right? You'll be fast with no velocity. You have to automate. This is the invisible part of sales cycle velocity. And this is around the tech stack and the data playbook. Data, metrics, and analytics create actionable insights when fully aligned with strategy. Segmentation enables you to take the right action with the right person. And technology creates accelerations and lowers costs. You have to build your tech stack today. We have a program. You can get it online, or you can email us. We'll be happy to send it to you on the keys to building a high growth tech stack. One of the things we talked about is you don't buy technology. You don't license technology. You hire it. You take a jobs to be done theory. You hire technology in the same way you hire people. Technology is not going to be the reason you succeed. It will increasingly be the reason you fail. Be sure that you're automating and utilizing technology intelligently to drive greater sales cycle velocity. Alrighty. Second to last point for increasing velocity. We focus on the wrong inputs or the wrong outputs. You see, here's what I've learned. We have a tendency to focus on efforts and results, activities and what happened. They're both easy to measure. They're both easy to see. But what we don't do is we don't focus on outcomes. We don't even, for the most part, even get to the point where we define the desired outcome that we have. Right? An outcome is a controllable factor. So we don't have 100% control, but we have a high degree of influence around an outcome that has a causal relationship, what I refer to as what causes sales. This is the center of where we need to be focused. When you understand what causes sales, you can solve for velocity. Right? Because what happens up to that point of what causes sales is that's where all the unpredictability is. That's where all the time is spent. Once you hit that point, once you hit the what causes sales, things happen very predictably. They're very manageable. They're highly leverageable after that point. And so I can't tell you in your business. Well, I could, but I can't tell you on this webinar. I could work with you on a one-to-one basis to identify what causes sales. But you need to identify what causes sales. By the way, if there are any Moneyball fans out here, and for those of you that know me, you're probably sick of me talking about Moneyball. But that's what Moneyball was all about. They knew they don't control wins. Wins are what happened. They're rear view. They needed to identify what causes wins. And that is the entire study of Moneyball. That changed sports as we know it. Right? Today, the math guys are paid as much as the starting second baseman for your favorite team. It's amazing, right? Because they realized once they understood the causal relationship, things got a lot easier. When you understand that causal relationship, now we can get to metrics. Now we can get to measurements. Now we can measure the right things so that the right things get done. And I talked about what are the wrong things that we're measuring? Well, what should we be measuring instead? Here again, highly dependent on your situation, your economic model, your playbook, your what causes sales. But here's some things to get you thinking. Time spent per op. Remember, I'm not worried about sales cycle time chronology. I'm worried about sales cycle time. How much time are people spending on it? Because that's the irreplaceable limiting factor. One reason why automation is so powerful. Turns. How many sales can I manage per rep? If you don't understand what turns are, just ask any restaurant owner. They will tell you the importance of turns. Capacity. We're so focused on hiring more people. We are in such a battle of sales headcount. And I get that that's great for your fiefdom. We literally did an analysis for a company a month ago and identified where the data showed us we could very easily create 35% more capacity. And this was a company that was in a position where they were like, we have to hire salespeople. We have to hire salespeople. And we said, whoa, we can increase your sales team by a third at least without hiring a single person. And they go, okay, awesome. That's great. But what do we have to do to hire salespeople, right? Let's focus on capacity, yield, velocity, throughput. These are the things we need to be measuring. These are what solve for revenue and solve for lifetime growth. Quick summary. Want to increase your sales cycle velocity? Fold frequently. Solve for customer acquisition. Sell the problem first. Win the ZMOT. Master lead activation plays. Focus and build the sales focal point. Automate the predictable. Build your playbook around what causes sales and measure the right things. Those are the keys to increasing sales cycle velocity. You work on these 9 things. You compare your existing approach to what we talked about here. And I promise you, you're going to see at least a 25 to 50% increase in sales cycle velocity. If you'd like some help, if you'd like us to take a look at it, no cost, no obligation, if you'd like us to help give that look, identify where can you get some of that increased velocity, let us know. Because you watch this webinar, we're happy to provide for you one of our lead activation plays. We call it the Customer Acquisition Platform Review. We'll review your total situation in relation to the issues that we've talked about here, as well as some of the other principles that we share. Just send me an email. Visit the website. Let us know. We'd be happy to help you out. And I just want to, again, tell you how much I appreciate and am honored by the fact that you took 50 minutes out of your day to hear what we had to say. And if there's any way we can help make sure that you accelerate the velocity for yours, we're happy to do that. Here's to your growth journey.